I'm never sure how these microphones work when you're tall. It's kind of like I have to stoop down here. So my name is Richard Williams. I am the director of the Small Press United program at IPG. We are a distributor. We are one of the only distributors who handles small press publishers who might be doing one or two books in the entirety of their existence. We've been going since about 2009. IPG's actually had a small press program for about 2 decades, but we realized that technologically speaking and affordability and everything that's going on in this industry, it's a lot easier to make a good-looking book now that has a platform that needs to have a distribution behind it. So we sort of changed our program in 2009, and I've been running it ever since. I think the thing that we're confronted with the most when trying to talk about how to become distributor ready is the fact that this community doesn't necessarily understand what a distributor does because there's nobody to explain it. I find that all the time. The most common thing is we get these applications from people who have submitted their great books to Barnes & Noble, and they get a letter from Barnes & Noble that says, well, we'd like to buy your book, but we can't unless you're with a distributor. So here's a list of distributors. Go, have fun. And the problem with that is that they don't really understand what they need to do in order to get into the distributor so that Barnes & Noble can sell their book. So I'd like to just clarify the role that a distributor plays and why somebody might need one. Barnes & Noble certainly is a big thing. I mean, obviously, traditionally, a distributor gets your books into bookstores. That's kind of the old school model. And this is because it's affordable for the vendors to come to you as a distributor to buy books rather than having a relationship with each and every publisher that publishes a book these days. So that's the primary reason for that. But what a distributor does is we open up your sales to all sales channels, not just Barnes & Noble, but essentially all the online resellers and the independent resellers, national wholesalers, library wholesale, online specialty museum, gift, big box, mass merchandise, essentially anywhere books are sold. We do this through a sales force. We have IPG, for example, has about 3 dozen sales reps throughout the US and Canada who are the old school sales reps who go into the account and present the book. We also have another 12 reps who work in-house. So it's not just old school field reps, but it's also people who work in the office to make sure that we are monitoring the demand of your books all over the industry. So we have people who regularly look at Amazon's Vendor Central and Ingram's iPage and Baker & Taylor's Pub Alley to make sure that we're pushing enough books out to the industry to cover the bases when suddenly your demand creeps up. We also work with physical and digital books. So it's not just this idea that distributors are a dinosaur that only sell to physical stores. I mean, we have something like 300 digital vendors, people who are learning how to sell ebooks and market them in new ways. And we have marketing departments that actually work to work cross-platform. If something starts to sell on the digital level, how can we heighten that on the physical level? So the role of a distributor is still very important, I think, in the industry today if you really want to kind of bust your sales out. And finally, the difference is that we market you to the industry, but you as a publisher are still responsible to market yourself to your end consumers. So you're going to still do all the media and publicity that will get that noticed on the consumer level. We make you available on the industry level. So that's our role for that. One of the other common frequently asked questions, and I know I'm talking fast. I have a lot of information to impart in a short period of time. So is it good? All right. Then one other thing people often ask is, what is the difference between a distributor and a wholesaler? Wholesaler being such as what Ingram used to primarily focus on, and Baker & Taylor versus distributors like IPG and Perseus. And the difference is that a distributor really works on behalf of the publisher. We become the vendor of record to the rest of the industry. We conglomerate a bunch of little lists into one big list so that we can get out there and throw our muscle around the same way that Random House and Simon & Schuster do. It's something where The wholesalers, on the other hand, work on behalf of the customers. They are a one-stop shop for the customers to get as many books as they can in one place, at the most affordable cost. A distributor only carries the books of their own publisher clients. A wholesaler carries everything they can possibly carry. A distributor has a sales force, and a wholesaler does not. Distribution business is exclusive, and wholesale business is not. So those are the fundamental differences. There was going to be a handout about that. I don't think there is.
Do you want me to go check with her?
I don't think it really matters. If anybody really wants it, you can probably email me and I can send it to you. So that's something. Another thing is exclusivity. Everybody wants to know why distributors are exclusive, and the bottom line is that this is still a returnable industry. We can't be selling your book side by side with you selling your book somewhere else, because then if we get that return, it negates the profitability from the sales that we're doing. So as long as it's a returnable industry, it's got to be exclusive business. Likewise, a common question is, well, can I use you to get into Barnes & Noble but keep all my digital sales or sell to Amazon directly? And that's still part of exclusivity. We don't really want to be marketing a book for you that we're not going to recoup the costs on, and vice versa. Again, I just finished telling you that distributor has a role in digital sales these days. So, you know, if we're marketing a print book, it can boost your digital sales, and we want to have those products all sort of benefiting each other. Finally, can you sell on your own website and through your association sales to your friends? Yeah, a distributor sells to businesses essentially. All those direct-to-consumer sales are things that you're going to continue to do on your own. And this is sort of my segue into Gonzalo's part of the talk are all books eligible? And the bottom line is that no, that's what this is really all about, is how to make your books eligible for distribution. They're not eligible, first of all, because a lot of books don't conform to the expectations of the national market. First and foremost, you really just need to know the market you're publishing into and stay competitive within that market. But also, there are a lot of books published that just don't need national distribution. You might be publishing to a niche market or a regional market where, you know, all a distributor is going to do is take the same accounts and take a percentage of your sales. I mean, we're not going to do that. If I get a book submitted to me and I can't expand upon its market, I'm not going to take part of your sales for no reason. Can you succeed without a distributor? Yes, you absolutely can, although an example used in a presentation this morning was somebody making 1,400 cold calls to specialty accounts. And at the end of the day, I look at that and I think, why on earth would you want to do that? That's when you look at your own time and resources and the amount that's going to cost you in the long run versus what you save by hiring a distributor to do that for you. I mean, in that market alone, we have 100 different reps. If they each have 20 accounts, that's 2,000 calls right there that you don't have to make. So I think that you can succeed without a distributor, but depending on the market you want to reach, you don't want to. And then why won't a distributor sign me? Well, your books need to be distribution ready. I will let Gonzalo take the rest of this. So that's my first little blurb. Thank you.
You want to pass those out?
In a moment. Not quite.
Do you want to slowly when you want?
Sure. Thank you. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Richard, for explaining all of that so I don't have to, and I can just move forward with the next step here. My name is Gonzalo Ferreyra. I'm the Director of Acquisitions for Ingram Publisher Services. I'm based in Berkeley. Ingram home office is based in Laverne, Tennessee. And the only thing I'll add, Richard did a great job of explaining just what it is a distributor does. What I'll tell you is how does Ingram Publisher Services specifically fit into Ingram as the corporation that you may know from, and you're likely to know from either the print-on-demand services that we provide, or the, going back even further to 1964, the wholesale distribution model. We are a distributor. It's a consignment relationship with our publishers. It's a 3-year contract minimum, and we sign these publisher clients on for what we call full service distribution, which is a fancy phrase for a comprehensive pick, pack, and ship program that includes returns processing, billing and collections, sales representation, trying to remember if there's anything else in that, and all the services associated basically with that. We currently have about 115 clients and growing, closer to 120 with clients who are currently integrating. Just a sampling of them here for you, including, I'll call out She Writes and Little Pickle, who are here with us as well. But as you can see, a vast range of publishing types, models. They are all on board for that full service distribution. Varying degrees. One of the things we take pride in is that we work with publishers to create a customized menu of services for them, built around that full service model. And some of them are on board for full sales representation, some of them for partial sales representation, some of them just for fulfillment, no sales representation. So the approach I took, I'm sorry.
Quick, do you take one book publishers?
Let me answer that after I go through this, because it's a complicated answer. The answer is yes and no. So I took a very literal approach to the question here, and a particular approach, trying to look at it from my position as the Director of Acquisitions for IPS. And what are the questions that we as a team ask ourselves about publishers constantly? And this is, I think it's fair to say that this applies pretty much to any distributor. We all have our quirks and our specialties and what we're looking for, but when I get to this later part here, the real answer, if you will, I do think it applies to each of us. What I started off with here is just kind of the rote answer that I tend to give many times a day, really. And the one thing I want to point out is what you're seeing here does come from exposure to upwards of 200 publishers a year, I would say. We probably engage well over 200. That includes a lot of brief conversations, a lot of very lengthy ones. We sign about 15 to 20 publishers a year. So it's not quite as competitive as Harvard, but it's reasonably competitive out there. The road answer is simply what I try to point out to position internally and externally the kind of minimums that we're looking for. But to your question just now, that's meant to be broken. It really is largely about long-term business potential that we see in the publisher, rather than where they stand right at this moment, either in terms of annual gross revenue or number of releases. So specifically, if it's a one-title publisher, but there's room for growth, there's vision, there's sales potential, editorial and design vision, infrastructure, we certainly will take a closer look at it. Certainly, if it's a one-book publisher and that one book has a proven track record and is a very strong niche title, we would gladly work with them. If it's a one-author publisher who has a very established platform, we would gladly work with them. So ultimately, it does come down to business potential, not surprisingly, and a few more detailed answers that we'll go into here, or questions that we'll go into here. So really, like I said, the rote answer, if you stop me in the hall and I'm in a hurry to get somewhere else, that's what I'll probably tell you. The real answer that we go into, or the real question that we go into internally, is about vision, sales potential, editorial and design, and infrastructure. There are no surprises here, and I apologize in advance if any of this sounds patronizing, because some of these are very, very obvious. But again, after talking to 200 publishers a year, you'd be astonished at how often folks don't seem to realize the fact that we're looking at you as a business as much as we're looking at you as a publisher, a lover of books, et cetera. Yes, sir.
I hope this isn't too basic, but I'm terribly confused about Ingram.
Sure.
Ingram Distribution Services, Ingram Publishing Service, Ingram Spark, and all the other children of the Ingram family.
Right.
Who does what? I get different answers if I talk to you as opposed to Kelly Gallagher. I get a different answer
Okay.
from somebody else.
Kelly should be saying the same thing I'm saying, but I will very briefly answer that question just so we don't slow things down, and just to clarify for everyone, but then maybe we can talk afterwards, since I undoubtedly will not effectively answer it in the short time. Ingram is the corporate umbrella. Under Ingram, we provide an incredibly broad range of author and publisher services. Our primary function for many, many years was as the major book wholesaler to the market. It was a buy-sell relationship from publishers. We would buy product from the publishers, provide it under a wholesale distribution model to retailers, return what we didn't sell. We still do that, and we still are one of the leading wholesalers along with the likes of Baker and Taylor in the market.
And what label goes on that particular function?
Ingram Content Group.
I got it.
Okay, we then have Lightning Source, which is our print-on-demand arm. We have Core Source, which is our digital distribution model. And trust me, it took me a long time to learn the acronyms and all, the whole thing. And then we have IPS, which is Ingram Publisher Services, which has been around since 2006, which is the model that I represent and that we're talking about here, which is this distribution model, a true contractual distribution relationship.
As opposed to content, who's the wholesaler.
Precisely. That's the biggest distinction to make.
Right.
And we are different. We talk a lot and we point to each other a lot, but we're different entities under the Ingram umbrella.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
we can talk more about that. So just to continue, so what does vision, sales potential, editorial and design, and infrastructure mean from the Ingram perspective? And what I tried to do was really lay out what are the questions that by and large, emphasis on by and large, you as a publisher should be able to answer yes to for us to possibly acquire you. It's not to say that every answer needs a yes, but just to give you some guidelines on what it is that we're looking at to establish for ourselves that, as I said earlier, there's a long-term potential to work with this publisher. We're signing folks on for a minimum of 3 years. We're hoping to work with them for many, many renewals of that 3 years. So, right there is one key point that, and I go back to your question because it's a very good one. One title publisher, well, we don't want one title if that's all that we're looking at for the next decade. If it's the start of something much bigger, because everybody else has to start somewhere, then gladly we'll take a look at it. So I'm not a big believer in PowerPoint presentations where the person reads everything to you, so I'll just read a few of these, but to make the point. But just to try to clarify for you what it is we mean by this. In the first instance, and this is key and plays out throughout the entire round of questions. The takeaway here is can we describe your program effectively in an elevator pitch? Is it clear? Is it very clear? Is there a consistency of the subject matter, of the format, of the approach of the publisher? It really is about simplifying our positioning of you as a publisher in the market. It can't be difficult to explain your publishing model or your publishing strength to a potential buyer. We're working with the gatekeepers out there, whether it's at Tattered Cover, and by gatekeepers I mean the trade book buyers, whether they're at Tattered Cover or Barnes & Noble. And particularly with a new publisher, if we're going to get their attention, they're going to want to see a yes answer to that first one. Diversity can come later. If you're Farrar Straus, you can publish a coffee table book next to a children's title, next to a memoir, next to a collection of poetry. But at the beginning, please try to focus as much as possible. The next one, as I said earlier, we do sign 3-year contracts. We want this to be a long-term relationship. We want the publisher to be thinking long-term. I'm not saying to have clarity on the next 3 years worth of publishing. I've worked at many large publishers who don't know what they're publishing next year, but have an idea. Have an idea of where it's going to go, what series you're going to build on, whether the book we're talking about is the first book of many in a series or from that author. Some sort of confidence that you will be around for a long time. Complete understanding of the current book market. Pretty obvious, maybe, but I've had to define terms like ISBN and pub date for potential clients. Please don't ask us to define that for you. Here, yes, don't get me wrong. But if you are hoping for distribution, please have that jargon, be fluent in the jargon. Try to be fluent. Use these events to become as fluent as possible. Have an intuitive read on the trends, the directions, the opportunities of the market. Study the market closely. Visit bookstores. Look at what your competition is doing. Look at what they're doing very, very well and copy it. Don't ask yourself what they're doing poorly because you don't care. You want to know what they're doing well and copy it. The next one, best in class, not a, this is a plus, not a requirement, of course. It always helps, and it goes back to what I was saying up at the top. If you can come to me and point out that you are the best at this very small niche, or you are striving to be the best at this very small niche. I love acquiring publishers like that. They are easy to position, they're easy to present, they're strong in a particular kind of title, and they tend to perform well. And that can be a regionalism, it can be great books about Texas, it can be great books about Japanese studies. I'm looking at you, Stonebridge, in the back. It can be any number of things. We work with a number of publishers along those lines, large and small. Nolo is a classic example. What does Nolo do? They do law books for you to be able to understand the law at home. That is all they do, and they do it better than anyone out there. If a store is going to have a law category in their store, or law shelf, they have to have Nolo books. So, again, I'm talking fast like Richard did because I think we all tend to talk fast because we have a lot to impart. So I'll try to speed it up a little bit. Sales potential. I think this slide largely speaks for itself. We want to know, and we have to judge you in the harshest terms possible, very mercenary terms, as to whether you have potential to thrive in this market. If we don't think you will, we will tell you. And you can believe us or not, but collectively, you're being considered by people who probably have 1,000 years of experience in this business. I've got 25 of those, not quite 1,000, but yes.
Can you specify whether it's more towards fiction or nonfiction in whatever it is? Because I know that it's very different for fiction and nonfiction. Sometimes some things really pertain to nonfiction more than they do to fiction.
I'm speaking a little more generally. We should talk as to what you're getting at. I think I know, but I'm trying to stay a little more general than that. Because we acquire both, we apply the same standards. On the next slide about editorial and design probably is where it kicks in a little bit more as to what does it mean editorially and design-wise for a novelist to be, or a fiction title to be viable versus a business title. I did want to single out one of them. Of course, I believe that all of these points are important, but this one right here, does the publisher have a comprehensive marketing plan and or a strong platform? And if the publisher doesn't, do the authors that the publisher represents have that plan or that platform? This one's massive, and I say that because it's essential, and very, very few publishers have it. The platform increasingly is as important, if not more important, than the marketing plan. We can all type up a few slides of how many Facebook likes we have and how much we're going to spend on an ad and all of that. But if the author has a existing platform, essentially where we can look at it and say, okay, there's a market out there. It's already identified. It's already created for this author of hungry consumers who are going to pick up his or her work. That's significant for us. And then the last one, will our reps be eager and proud to present this publisher's titles to our buyers? Another way of putting it is, do we want it in the bag? To quote a sales rep. They are presenting, earlier I had 115 publishers listed up there. That's about 300 titles a season that our reps are presenting. Do we want your books added to those 300 titles? And are those reps going to be proud to pull them out, whether it's in front of a tattered cover buyer, Barnes & Noble buyer, or whoever it may be? The reality is we have to be snobs about the titles and the publishers that we're bringing on. We're very attentive to quality, which leads me, conveniently, to the next slide. Editorial and design. Again, pretty obvious, right? But it's rather painful, and I'm pausing here because I want to say it very delicately. So I mentioned earlier that I talk to 200 publishers a year. How many titles is that I look at? I can't even keep track of. Some of what I see is genuinely awful. I mean, beyond description. And it breaks my heart because these are people who have invested a great deal of time, money, energy, and passion into what they're sending me. They have failed to do a lot of what kind of the groundwork that I'm asking of them. And I won't say too much more about that, but so really, allow me this. What I always want to ask them is, now, did you have this vetted by a number of people who are not close to you, who are not in love with you, who are not part of your family or your good friends? And I don't ask them that. I'm much more polite than that. I don't, as a matter of course, I don't like slamming or closing the door on anyone because you never know what's going to happen in this business and who's going to come back around. But that really is the key. Have it vetted. Have an honest look at the content, the cover, the packaging, all of it. And as I said earlier, compare it to what is out there. It needs to look as good as all those books that are out on those tables. It's as simple as that. I say simple, he says, but that really is the takeaway. Again, it's hard for me to convey to you what I'm talking about without you seeing some of what I've seen, but you have to trust me on it. So, and sorry, one moment here as I review some of my notes. I think that's it on that slide. And then lastly, and this isn't all that, or it wasn't all that obvious a point to us internally until we signed on a few folks who had great answers to those first three sets of questions. And then they came on board, or they started the integration process, and hiccups, roadblocks started happening. And we realized the importance of what you see up here, the need for and I've already said this before, but for an educated publisher and for an infrastructure, it really all leads down to this. The bandwidth, whether it's it can be one person. I'm not saying it's the number of people that they have, but either the knowledge or the resources to manage the process. It is not easy. It's not easy to go through integration. It's not easy to fill out all the paperwork that we make you fill out. It's not easy to manage the metadata to the degree that we demand that you fill it out. It's not easy to prepare for 3 seasons of selling schedule a year. So with that, I hope I haven't disillusioned any of you. There's tremendous opportunity. We do sign 20 publishers a year. We love talking and engaging publishers. I welcome all of you to pick my brain further after this. And with that, I'll hand it off to Jared. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Richard and Gonzalo. I know that's a lot of information to take in. I'm going to try to simplify it just a little bit and put in a couple of points for you. There's 2 main topics I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what is a business model and why is it important for you to have it done before you approach a distributor. And they touched on that a little bit, and we'll talk about that specifically. And the second thing I'm going to talk about is what specific PR and marketing activities you should do or have in place, again, before you approach a distributor. But I want to back up a minute, and I'm a real big believer in educating you guys, and I see gaps, and I've been here all morning, I've talked to a lot of people, and the same questions come up every year, and I think back to both of their points, I want to talk and make sure you understand terminology, understand role players, and understand necessary components. Because the biggest question in this class should not be how to become distributor ready, but it should be, is a distributor the right choice for me? And then, if it is, how to become distributor ready. So first, I want to talk about the 5 components for really putting a book together. What I mean by putting a book together is coming to the market, okay? In the case of IBPA, the agent is out of the equation because you are playing the role of author, agent, and publisher, right? You're wearing 2 different hats as author and publisher in that case. You're not going out to solicit an agent if you're independently publishing your book, or if you're starting your own imprint, or if you're publishing with a small press imprint that doesn't require the solicitation of an agent. So in that case, let's talk about the role players for a minute. You have the author. We know what the author does. We have the publisher. Hopefully you understand the role of a publisher. Then you have distributor, wholesaler, retailer, and consumer. These guys play the role of distributor, okay? Their main goal, and I'm going to break this down in simple terms like I do with the clients I work with so you understand. They warehouse your books, they fulfill orders, they sell into every marketplace you can imagine, online, brick and mortar, wholesalers, and so forth, and then they fulfill orders, right? That's their job. And I'm simplifying it because it's really important for you guys to get your hand around what they do and don't do. Their job is to sell in on a trade level. They market, they sell in, and they try to get the buyers to buy your book. Your job is to market your book on a consumer level, the PR and marketing on a consumer level. If they do their job right, every retailer on the planet is carrying your book. Now you've got to get the consumers interested. Your job is to go get consumers interested in buying it. Does that make sense to everybody? No. Yes, no? Okay, good. I just want to make sure it's as simple as possible because if we don't understand the different role players and what their jobs are, that's the first thing you have to clarify.
You're talking about distributors.
These guys right here. I'm simplifying it, but really I don't think they'll disagree with me on the simplification of really that's their role in this process. There's a little bit more to it than that, but so you guys understand, that's really what they're talking about. Getting your book ready for market. And this goes back to Gonzalo's point of on one of his slides. Editing, interior design, cover design, distribution, and printing, or printing and then distribution, right? Those are the 5 main components of getting your book ready for the marketplace, to keep it as simple as possible. The biggest and most important thing I can tell you about those different components is when you bring people on to do those different components, your team, sometimes it's a one-time shot with an editor, sometimes you're creating a long-term team here. Understand what their roles are and are not, and what their specialties are and are not. Don't let your cover designer do editing, right? It sounds silly, but we do this all the time. If you're going to have someone do your cover, have a professional cover designer do your cover. Don't have your friend who's a graphic artist do your cover. Let your graphic artist friend do a cover design, and then let a cover designer implement it into a print-ready cover that fits all the norms and expectations of a print-ready book. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Just want to make sure, because these are the simplest things that will immediately have both of these guys say, thanks, but no thanks. I mean, I see books like that all the time. I have potential clients that come to me all the time and say, hey, I've got this book. It's about blankety blank. I've printed 3,000 copies. They're in my garage. What can we do for PR and marketing? And I say, send me a copy of the book. I look at it. Title's not printed on the spine. I'm sure you've seen this. Or the ISBN is missing from the back above the barcode, or the barcode is the wrong format for the barcode. Tons and tons of different mistakes that I honestly have to turn around and say, this has to be redone before we can do anything. And it's unfortunate. So it's very important that if you're going to enter this, that you recognize that this is a business. You're not going to open up a restaurant. You're not going to open up any other type of business before you become an expert in what you have to do with this. And distribution, if you're going to go that route, is the most critical element in those 5 components of having your book out there. You can package the best book in the world, and if it's sitting in your garage and it's not available to people, it's not going to sell. So you have to make sure that you put those components together properly before you can effectively get distribution from SPU, Ingram, or PPG, or whoever it happens to be. All right. So let's talk about what a business model is. All right. Does anybody here think they know what a business model is versus a marketing plan? Go ahead, tell me. Were you in one of my classes already? Go ahead.
Business model is how you're going to make money.
Business model, pretty close. It's how you plan to create, deliver, and capture value from what you're bringing to the marketplace. Create, deliver, and capture value from what you're bringing to the marketplace. When you're asking yourself what your business model is and you're answering those questions, if the way you plan on capturing value does not include online and retail sales, these guys aren't for you. It's as simple as that. And let me give you a really good example. Someone who was in my previous class will have already heard this. If you were a realtor and you're working in San Diego and you want to distinguish yourself from some of the other realtors and you want to write a quick book that's 10 questions every first-time home buyer should ask themselves, and it's going to be 100, 110 pages, it's going to be a real quick book, and you're using that as a marketing tool. You're using that as an extension of a handshake, as a substitute for a business card, right? So it really resonates with people. You're capturing value based on that as a marketing tool. You're capturing value based on using that to raise your veracity and credibility, because if you've got a byline on a book, local media will have you on versus the other realtor who doesn't, to talk about the state of the market in San Diego, right? So the way you're capturing value on that product is for purposes other than retail sales and online sales, right? But is that value still important to you based on your business model? Yes, no, I look at blank stares. Is that an important thing? Absolutely. Is that going to be of interest to these guys? Absolutely not, because what are they interested in? What do you guys get a percentage of?
Sales.
Book sales. So if your business model does not significantly support online and retail sales, brick and mortar retail sales, then you don't need distribution through these guys. There's no point to it, right? So the first thing you have to ask yourselves is, how do you plan to create, deliver, and capture value from what you're bringing to the market? That's your business model. And the second you answer those three questions, you're going to know whether or not you need to pursue distribution. Does that make sense to everybody? How many people here in their heads think, maybe my majority of my sales are going to come from back of the room sales, where I'm going out and doing speaking engagements? Anybody here, does that fit? Okay. Does distribution necessarily make sense for you for that then? No. Okay. Unless, of course, you're planning on doing corporate sales, and every city you travel to, you also want to do bookstore events. Then you want to have your books available through the bookstores, right? So you have to look at your business model, and then you have to look at, okay, how do I plan on promoting this book outside of just my business model? Does it make sense for me to also do bookstore events? Does it make sense for me, for other reasons, to have this book available through the retail marketplace? That's why having a business model is so critical. And in doing that business model, I'll get to you in 1 second, you're not only going to answer those questions for yourself to decide if you need a distributor, but if you do need a distributor after answering those questions, it's going to help you in all of the information they're going to want when you pitch them. I recently helped a client pitch a book to SPU just 2 weeks ago, and I'd never done it before, and I went through their website. All of the questions they asked were relevant in doing a business model. I could answer every single one of them quickly because we did the business model: create, deliver, and capture value, because that's what they want to know. How are you planning on marketing it? Really important point, and I know they both said it, but I want to make sure it resonates with you guys. A distributor is not taking you on as an author. They're not taking on your book. They're taking you on as a publisher. Over here, you're wearing the hat of a publisher. Over here, you're wearing the hat of an author. As the publisher, you are presenting a particular book or series of books and the marketing plan for that book or books. Okay? It doesn't matter that you may be the author of one of those books. In their head, they're saying, okay, you are XYZ imprint. This is the 1 book, 6 books, 12 books that you have under your imprint. You could have written all of them, or you could have other authors writing books. Or down the road, your business model could include bringing on other authors. But they're looking at you as a publisher. Gonzalo said it the best in terms of it's a long-term relationship. They don't want a one-book wonder. Will they take on 1 book if it's going to sell 100,000 copies? Yeah. But that is very few and far between. And in very rare cases, it's difficult to predict that. I think if you ask these guys if they wanted to take a risk on a one-book wonder or they wanted to take a risk on a publisher that had a steady plan for 6 and releasing books into the marketplace and what I call a long runway approach, they'd probably go for the long runway approach because it's more predictable and it tells them that you have a true business model in place, your plan of attack for this. So how many people in here, based on that, think that a distributor makes sense for them? Okay, how many people in here think a distributor may not make sense for them? Okay, let me ask you, why not?
Mainly what you said about doing an engagement and selling books in the back.
Okay, how you plan on capturing value. Yeah, and that's a really important question. That's gonna solve a lot of questions right away. Let's talk about what specific PR and marketing activities you can do prior to soliciting distribution for a minute. You want to obviously have a business model. You obviously want to have a marketing plan, and there's a distinction between those two. Your marketing plan is almost part of your business model. That's how do you plan on capturing value. That's really your marketing plan. The delivery system is not only the mediums through which your book is produced, audio, online, digital, print book, but it's also, are you planning on doing traditional distribution, print on demand distribution, back of the room sales? That's the delivery mechanism. So the type of activities you're planning on doing should be dictated on who your target audience is, right? So you're talking about doing speaking engagements and back of the room sales. Who do you see as your target audience?
Churches.
Churches? Okay. Who else in here is thinking about doing something outside of retail sales for capturing value? Back of the room, go ahead. You? Yeah?
Back of the room.
Close enough.
Reading at schools.
School events? Okay. Here's an interesting thing to think about. I book a lot of authors to speak at schools and do school events. The majority of schools do not want to do direct sales. They want to purchase through the local stores. It's actually easier to book yourself as an author now if you're in Barnes & Noble or what have you, because Barnes & Noble will actually come and sell the books for you at the events, and they're not giving you a check, they're giving the check to Barnes & Noble, right? So if that's part of your business model, it's going to be easier for you and you're going to be more successful at booking more events at schools if you're actually in with the stores, which means you need what? Exactly. Give me another example of someone. Go ahead.
I have a very niche book, and so my target audience would be 45 to 75. People who like to travel, they like to travel for history, and they have the money to travel. They like to see original buildings, sites, and places where significant historical events have happened.
So affluent people that want to do unique and luxury travel. Okay. And how would you connect those people outside traditional retail marketplace? How do you plan to do that?
I don't know, that's why I'm here.
Okay. It sounds like that, but to me, just off the top of my head, it sounds like you would be limiting yourself. I'm pretty creative on the spot. It sounds like you'd be limiting yourself if that book wasn't available through traditional outlets, because a lot of those people who are affluent are readers and are looking for books through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and you can distribute yourself doing that. You can certainly start your own Amazon account and Barnes & Noble account if you want to. But you still, when I say traditional retail outlets, whether they're distributing for you or you're distributing for yourself through those outlets, you should still be available through the retail outlets, if that makes sense. Go ahead.
So to what extent, because with my book, I would sell at both retail and non-retail back of the room sales,
Mhm.
all sorts of places, schools. So to what extent are you limited if you go with a distributor to being able to sell it in all those other places?
That's a really good question. It really depends on the relationship with the distributor and what their terms are. Some distributors,
Is that negotiable, or is it pretty much this is the way to do it?
well, the bigger boys in the block, they're harder to negotiate with.
Well, they're not gonna
We
deal
will
with it.
negotiate that.
Yeah.
No, we discuss, I mean, essentially what are your house accounts, if you have house accounts. Depending on the size, I mean, to be blunt, depending on how badly we want to sign you on, we will yield some of those accounts or not. That's what it comes down
But
to.
I'm a one-book publisher.
Right,
But also, if you don't have much leverage, but also if it's marketplaces where they don't exist, you're gonna have a much better opportunity to do that. If you say to them, I'm a professional speaker, so I'm going to be going on this every time I speak here. I'm also going to be doing events at bookstores, and I'm going to be doing events here where you're going to get retail sales. But when I do my private speaking events, obviously no one's going to come and sell those for me. I'll try to get Barnes & Noble to come when I can, but otherwise it's up to me back of the room. That's one of those scenarios where they're not going to fulfill orders one at a time to your back of the room events. So there's some leverage there, but you would have to convince them that even though you're setting up back of the room sale events for yourself, how are you also creating retail sales off of that?
Especially market sales.
Jared, can I answer?
Absolutely, please go
I
ahead.
just want to say that in the circumstance you're saying, if the outlet you're talking about is already buying books from a distributor or from a wholesaler, and that's their like regular channel, it's cheaper for them to get the books that way. They're not going to want to work with you directly anymore.
Right, right. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Does that make sense to everybody? Was there another question back here? Okay. What I want to leave you with, and then we can open the floor to more questions back for these guys, is the business model is going to tell you, A, whether you not need a distributor, and then B, how you're going to pitch yourself to that distributor. 3 simple questions: how to create, deliver, and capture value from what you're bringing to the market. And everybody should be able to sit down and write that to themselves, for themselves. The second thing is the specific PR and marketing activities. Let's talk about that for about 2 minutes, all right? What other than, I kind of laughed when Gonzalo said it because it's absolutely true, other than putting some fancy slides together and saying, well, I'm going to spend this much on advertising, I'm going to do this, what tangible things do you think these guys would be interested in seeing to convince them that your book is going to sell well? Let's just think logically. Go ahead.
I think they're gonna wanna know how big my tribe is.
Following? Yeah, if you have a database of 200,000 people, absolutely. What else?
Professional reviews.
Professional reviews, that's a good one. What other type of reviews? How about endorsements from other New York Times bestselling authors that you know once your book comes out, they're going to blurb it? If Tess Gerritsen blurbs a book, she's got a following of 300,000 people. You know she's going to blurb your book and she's going to also put it up on her site. They're going to want to know that, right? I mean, guys, they can correct me if I'm wrong in this. What else? Let's think logically.
I know a lot of those people, you know, those people you're talking about. I mean, I'm being facetious. I know nobody.
Yeah.
How am I gonna get those?
You know what's a great...
Testimonials and everything.
Can I tell you something? I'm the director of the La Jolla Writers Conference. I've been putting it on for 15 years, okay? Every single faculty member that teaches at our conference volunteers their time to come down for 3 days and teach people like you. The 3rd year we did that conference, a cop who had written a collection of police stories called, one was A Cop's Life was the first one, True Blue was the second one that came out. He brought his manuscript with him. This is why you go to writers' conferences. Sitting in a writers' conference, he went to a bunch of the different reading critiques. He read 3 pages, 4 pages here and there. He read to Tess Gerritsen. He read to Michael Connolly, the Bosch series that's on Amazon now. He read to T. Jefferson Parker. All 3 New York Times bestsellers. 3 or 4 pages each. You know what he left with? 3 endorsements from them. That's how you make connections. And these are not exceptions to the rule. This is every single year at writers' conferences. You want to get to know these people? Go where they're speaking. Go where they're volunteering their time to help you guys become better writers. This is every single year. This is what you get from writers' conferences and from networking. You can also write them.
The one thing that I've seen in this little journey of mine is the distribution component is really married to the marketing and PR component of publishing.
Absolutely, because they're going to...
You can't have one without the other.
They won't take you on unless you have a marketing PR plan. But let's talk about that. So we've got endorsements from other big name authors. We've got reviews. What else? And we've got mailing lists and things like that. What else is going to convince them or give them that nudge that you're serious?
You're gonna do speaking or promoting, speaking events.
If you have events pre-booked, absolutely. Media pre-booked, absolutely, or lined up. What else?
Hiring a publicist?
Will you guys take them more seriously if they've invested money in a publicist? Absolutely. Okay, what else?
Backlist or previous sales history independently?
Absolutely. If there's an independent author who's already been in the marketplace with their first book and they've done all right, in their first year of the one title, they've sold 5,000 or 8,000 copies of the book on their own, you're going to take that much more seriously than someone who hasn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they're going to assume, right or wrong, they're going to assume, look, if they've done this on their own through limited distribution channels, what can we do through much broader distribution channels?
There's nothing, I failed to, I think, effectively emphasize that on the sales slide. There's nothing like sales history. It is proof of the business model. And that is, on the sales front, really the first thing we look at. Now, as an emerging publisher, as a brand new publisher, you're not going to have that. That's okay. We're then applying other criteria. But if you can come to me with a strong backlist and X sales figures, that's going to get my attention.
Mine too. If you come to me with a strong sales history, that's like the number one thing that we will sign you for.
What's strong?
Well, it depends on the book.
Depends on the book,
category,
it depends
and
on the category. What's
How
that?
many zeros that you don't laugh at?
What kind of book are you talking about?
Non-fiction,
Non-fiction, particular category?
Get me 3 zeros minimum, and
Yeah.
we'll talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And this is, I'll leave you with this point so we can open up for general questions, and I'll come sit back down here and we can all ask questions. But this is what I have to say to you guys. You're starting a business. I cannot emphasize that enough. This is a business. These guys are not going to take you seriously unless you're taking yourself seriously, which means that if you haven't developed a business model and then written a marketing plan where you can demonstrate how you're going to, on your own, generate, I would say, a minimum of 5,000 sales of your book, and let's say the first 6 to 12 months, and then consistently build thereafter, then forget trying to get them interested in you. Don't invest in your business. It's simple math. 5,000 copies of a book, you should be able to stand on a street corner and sell 5,000 copies in a year if you were standing on a street corner. And I'm not saying that to be facetious. You should be able to do that. But if you don't have a plan in place that demonstrates how you plan on doing that, and you don't believe you're going to be able to do that, or if you look at your book and say, I just want this out there. Okay, they're not interested in just wanting it out there. They're interested in how you're going to sell it. So be honest with yourselves. Ask yourself those 3 questions with regard to your business model. Make a point of looking at your marketing plan and saying, can I really envision how I'm going to sell this? If you're doing speaking engagements that you're going to be able to sell through retail, having Barnes & Noble sell for you or something like that, and you know you're only going to be speaking to 300 people a year, you're not going to generate 5,000 sales by speaking to 300 people a year, right? So you have to think this through, and that's the biggest thing. Figure out if your business model makes sense to you, and if it doesn't even make sense to you financially, it's certainly not going to make sense to them.
And I'll just add, what should be obvious, but in my experience is not often enough. You need to be a business because we are a business, and we are measuring and proposing to you based on profitability expectations. I mean, that's the truth, the blunt truth. And I deal with far too many prospective clients who call me and are just ready to sign up and don't understand that there's a process, that there's a selective, very careful process that goes into that, because we have to run the numbers and look at what's possible.
The most common mistake that people make in that case is they think that because we're the business, we're going to take on the business responsibilities and you don't have to do anything anymore.
Remember, you're the
Very
publisher.
good point, yeah.
What I found is because there's so many people out there saying they're distributors, promising you that, oh, send us your books and we're gonna get them out there for you, and it's very underhanded a lot of times. And when you're starting
well,
out, it gets very
Yeah,
confusing
and
because.
you're right. The
you know,
truth is there aren't that many distributors, and I think we could both list them.
Yes,
We can
right.
both list them on less than
But
2
there's a lot of
hands.
people claiming
Right,
it.
absolutely. But
And they confuse
the
the
reality
terms.
is that in this market, where publishing, where the industry is today, there really aren't that many distributors. When folks ask me, well, where can I go? I have a small selection.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, and I think that one of the things we should answer for you, since we have 5 minutes, and that's a really strong point, is how do you know? How do you vet distributors to know if they're legitimate or not? Because I got to tell you, I've had people come to me, oh yeah, my book's in distribution.
Yeah. No,
It's not. So let's ask these guys, what are 2 or 3 simple steps to vet whether or not you're dealing with a legitimate distributor? What questions would they ask a distributor to find that out or not?
Do they have a sales force?
Okay, remember what we said. These guys do 4 things. They fulfill orders, warehouse, sell in, and, well, sell in is the 4th one. The big difference between a fulfillment house and a distributor is that a fulfillment house doesn't have a sales force that sells in. They'll post it up and put it on the retailer sites. They will fill orders if they come in to a certain degree, and they will warehouse your book. But they don't have a sales force that sells in. A great distinction is Pathways is a fulfillment house, right? They do those first 3 things, but they don't have a sales force that sells in. So that's a great question.
For example, Bookmasters, they say that they're gonna do that, and then you send them the book, and then you find out, well, we only, we're selective, blah, blah, blah.
I would ask to see their existing client list, and then I would start researching that client list. You know, I can bandy about, and as can Richard, a long list of established publishers that we've been working with for a long time.
And guess what?
That's more valuable than anything else I can.
And you're at a conference right now and you're part of an organization that gives you that resource list. Take advantage of that, because they have the lists here that tell you who's a fulfillment house and who's a distributor. The biggest question, though, I think is do you have a sales staff do you have a rep staff that sells in? Do you have a sales staff that sells into the buyers? How frequently do you sell in? You know, there's some that sell in every 6 months, some that sell in every month, some that sell in every 2 months. If they say constantly,
Certain places too?
who
Well,
yes.
you can also ask them how many active accounts do they have?
Yeah.
What channels do they work with?
These
You
are
know,
all-
we Ingram, we have 38,000 active accounts.
Yeah,
If
okay.
somebody buys books, we sell to
pretty
them.
much anybody
Yeah,
that sells
exactly.
We have a question back here.
So are there minimum order quantities? So for example, small mom and pop or boutiques, do you say, okay, 24 books is our cutoff, or?
You mean to the retailers and wholesalers, to the
Yes.
market that we're selling into?
Yes.
No, there are minimums to achieve free freight, for example, but we're very flexible when it comes to that.
Yeah, the sales reps
Yeah.
will make seasonal specials
Right.
and so forth in order to get larger sales when they go and they visit events. But it doesn't mean that people don't have to buy at those specials. They can buy whatever they want.
Does everybody understand those two previous questions, by the way? Do you have a sales staff that sells in? And the second question being, how many active accounts do you have? Meaning, if I ask Richard, I say, Richard, how many active accounts do you sell into? Meaning, how many different retailers and wholesalers and so forth do you actually fulfill orders to? Do you actually sell into? Those are the questions you'd be asking to vet whether or not they are a legitimate distribution house or not. Those are two very important questions, and those will vet your list pretty quickly. Was there another question back there? Go ahead.
You said the contract is about it's 3 years, and you're looking at the renew, and we know the books are need to be returnable. And what's the frequency you return the book? It's 1 year, or it's the contract period?
You mean in the market? What is there is no limit. We're all trying to survive in a business where essentially a retailer or a customer can return the book at virtually any time.
As long as the book is still active.
Yeah, exactly, as long as the book is still active.
Thank you.
So what we do is we calculate on a monthly basis your net based on returns, so that's how we do it. But you can see a book come back 2 years later. That's the liability of putting books out into this market. Yes?
Is there an industry standard on returns from resellers?
I can tell you the number I bandy about. I don't know if it's the same as Richard's.
You mean what the industry is returning
Yeah,
right now in terms
yeah.
of what you can expect?
I would say between 20 and 30%.
I would definitely say
Yeah.
between 20 and 30.
And of course, the answer gets different depending on what channel you're looking at. That's the entire trade, or that's
Right.
the heart of the trade. If you're talking about supermarkets, if you're talking about clubs, if you're talking about the big box stores, it's considerably higher. So
And-
higher potential reward, much higher returns potential.
That's absolutely the inverse of what I would have assumed.
Yes. Be very careful with those channels. Yes, sir.
Talking about the exclusivity for distributors, you work on an exclusive basis, right?
We do. Yeah.
Okay, but if I need Ingram to get into B&N, but I need Baker Taylor to get into schools, what do I do?
Baker & Taylor is a customer of Ingram Publisher Services. So I don't know if you were there for the little explanation I gave about Ingram Wholesale as a separate entity from Ingram Publisher Services. Ingram Wholesale, our sister company, is a customer of ours. We are a distributor selling to that wholesaler. So I can explain it a little bit more. Afterwards.
I guess I got kind of lost.
The distributors give their books to the wholesalers. There's two primary wholesalers, Ingram and Baker and Taylor. In this case, the Ingram he's representing is on the distribution
Right.
level, right? So on the distribution level, along with Ingram, SPU, PPG, and a bunch of other distributors, they all send their books to two wholesalers primarily, Ingram and Baker and Taylor. So it's just two different companies. It's two different
It's two different tiers of the market,
Yeah.
really. And what distributors allow smaller publishers to do is, we're effectively aggregators of publishers that put you on a level with Random House, Simon & Schuster, all those guys with giant infrastructures and warehouses.
All right, guys, it's past the time. We'll answer one more question real quick, and then I think he has handouts, right?
Yes.
Well, I want to put those in the front. For the
Sure. Just very quickly, I should have mentioned this earlier. This is another way of understanding what Ingram looks for. This is the prospective client form. Everybody, no matter how large or small, I have complete one of these. And just by seeing what we look for in terms of the basics about the business, it's another way of answering that question. I'll ask you.
All right, thank you, guys.